The small gray courtroom felt colder than usual that morning, like the walls themselves sensed the storm building inside. Rain lashed the tall windows, drawing jagged streaks of water across the glass, casting smeared shadows on the polished floor. People in the gallery shifted, murmuring to each other in hushed voices, glancing toward the front with unease. At the defendant's table sat Staff Sergeant Calvin Drake, a 39-year-old veteran of 2 combat tours in Afghanistan. His once broad shoulders had narrowed some over the years, and his skin had lost its sun-hardened hue. A bulky leather brace clung to his left leg, and a pair of crutches leaned beside him. His face bore the weathered lines of a man who had seen more than any one lifetime should offer, but he remained upright, composed. He wore his old dress uniform, not new or pristine, but clearly maintained with care. He'd earned every thread, and that uniform was a quiet reminder of who he had once been and still was inside. But Calvin wasn't there for violence or theft or fraud. He wasn't some criminal. He was on trial because he had missed 2 municipal court dates. The reason? A string of unpaid parking citations that piled up as he struggled to navigate a disjointed public transit system ill-suited for people with mobility impairments. The court system, like so many other systems, didn't care about his limp. That much had become painfully clear. Presiding over the case was Judge Miriam Fallon, a woman known for her strict, no-excuses interpretation of the law. Cold-eyed and clinical in her delivery, she had a reputation for efficiency and a ruthless demand for compliance. To her, a missed court appearance was black and white. At the prosecution table, Assistant City Attorney Ross Campbell barely concealed his boredom. To him, Calvin's case was a slam dunk. Open and shut. Another file to close before lunch. The courtroom clerk called for order, and Judge Fallon entered briskly. Her black robe rippled behind her like a cape of judgment. She took her seat at the bench and scanned the docket. Staff Sergeant Calvin Drake, she called, her tone as cold as the rain. You are charged with contempt of court for failing to appear as ordered. How do you plead? Calvin struggled to rise, pressing one hand against the table, the other on his crutch. Not guilty, Your Honor, he said with a calm, restrained voice. Fallon frowned, flipping through the slim case file. Excuses have already been logged. Contempt is contempt. You were ordered to appear. You did not. I tried, ma'am, Calvin began, but she raised a hand sharply. We will move to sentencing, she said. Your military service is noted. In consideration, I am inclined toward leniency. A rustle of surprise moved through the room. But, she added pointedly, this courtroom demands respect. Before I pass sentence, you will stand without assistance, like any other citizen, and face this court properly. The air in the room snapped tight. Calvin didn't move. You will stand, she repeated, or I will hold you in further contempt. Murmurs rippled from the gallery. Even Campbell's smirk faltered. Calvin stared at the judge. His leg, shattered by an IED years ago, trembled under the table. His doctors had warned him, standing unassisted could worsen the damage. He might collapse. He might never walk again. But still, he reached slowly for the crutches, and then paused. With grim determination, he set them aside. A hush fell. Every eye watched him. He placed one foot down. His right leg, though weakened, held. His left leg spasmed under the strain. The leather brace groaned. He clenched his jaw, muscles straining, fingers trembling. For 3 agonizing seconds, he stood, swaying, quaking, but standing. Then, his knee buckled violently. The gallery gasped. Calvin's body crumpled. His shoulder hit the floor first. Then his head struck tile with a terrible thud. His crutches clattered away. A woman cried out. In the back row, a veteran clenched his fists and started to rise. Even Campbell flinched. But the most stunning moment was what came next. Calvin, sprawled on the floor, tried to get up. His limbs trembled. His breath was ragged. But he pushed, teeth gritted, refusing to quit. Because he was a soldier. And soldiers rise. Bailiff, Fallon finally said, voice tight. Assist the defendant. The bailiff, an older man with creased eyes and a silver buzz cut, knelt beside Calvin. Easy now, son, he murmured. Easy. I'm okay, Calvin rasped. I can. No, came a woman's voice, cutting through the chaos. A figure rushed through the courtroom doors. It was Natalie Drake, Calvin's younger sister. She wore blue medical scrubs and a hospital badge, her face streaked with tears. "Don't move," she pleaded, falling to her knees. "Please don't. You've done enough." She gathered her brother in her arms, whispering comfort as she cradled him. The judge remained silent. Campbell looked away, and the room saw it. Not a man on trial, not a failure, but a hero on the floor. A man who had given more than most ever would and was still trying to rise. An elderly man stood in the gallery. Then another, and another. Within seconds, a dozen veterans had risen. No shouting, no violence, just silent defiance. "Sit down," Fallon ordered. They didn't. An older woman with medals pinned to her chest stepped forward. "My grandson died overseas," she said, her voice shaking. "And if he saw this, if he saw you doing this to a man like him, he'd be ashamed of this courtroom." A rumble of agreement echoed. Fallon's gavel came down hard. "Order," a veteran near the front growled. "He gave his leg for this country, and you're punishing him for not standing." From the jury box, a young woman stood. Then another, and another. Nearly half the jurors rose. The bailiff returned to Calvin's side. "We'll do this your way, Sergeant." Together with Natalie, he helped Calvin sit up. His breath came heavy but stronger. The courtroom was no longer Fallon's. It belonged to Calvin now. Fallon, pale and shaken, looked around. She had lost the room, and more than just the room. The crowd began a low, thunderous chant. "Honor him! Honor him! Honor him!" Fallon looked to Campbell, but he was already backing away, shame etched across his face. Calvin sat on the floor, surrounded by people who saw him, not as broken, but as brave. Fallon finally rose. Her voice, for once, unsteady. "Mr. Drake," she said, stepping down from the bench, "this court owes you an apology." The gallery fell silent again. "I ordered you to stand without understanding what you've already endured. I failed you. I failed everyone in this room who understands sacrifice." She drew herself up. "All charges against Staff Sergeant Calvin Drake are dismissed with prejudice. His record will reflect nothing but the honor he's earned." Applause swept through the room like a wave. Then Fallon stepped forward, stopping in front of Calvin. Without hesitation, she dropped to one knee and bowed her head. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "And I thank you." Gasps echoed. Calvin, still shaking, reached out and placed his hand on her shoulder. A silent, powerful act of forgiveness. Sunlight pierced the windows. The storm had passed. Outside, the crowd had grown. Veterans in uniform, civilians waving flags, handmade signs. "Honor our heroes." Calvin Drake, American strength. When Calvin appeared in his wheelchair, silence swept the street. Then came applause, steady, reverent, raw. A reporter pushed forward. "Mr. Drake, what do you want people to know?" Calvin took a breath. "I didn't stand because a judge told me to," he said. "I stood because that's what we do. Even when we fall, we rise." He paused, his voice calm, even as his eyes gleamed with emotion. "And sometimes, when we can't stand, that's not weakness. It's proof we gave everything we had." His words traveled far and wide. Viral clips, national headlines. Schools, courtrooms, city halls, they all changed. Laws were reviewed. Policies rewritten. Calvin returned to a quiet life. But not for long. One evening, a knock came at his door. Natalie opened it to find 3 officials, one of them a poised woman named Valerie Price from the Office of Veterans Affairs. "Staff Sergeant Drake," she said warmly, "we're here to ask if you'd accept an appointment as a national ambassador for veterans' rights." Calvin was stunned. "I'm no politician," he said. "You don't need to be," Valerie said. "You just need to be who you are." He thought of the courtroom, the faces, the fallen friends. "I'll do it," he said. From then on, he spoke across the country. Crowds grew. Changes spread. Courthouses restructured policy. Cities honored veterans more than one day a year. One mayor even banned any judge from forcing a wounded veteran to stand ever again. He visited Arlington National Cemetery, placed poppies at the graves of fallen comrades, whispered their names. "Bobby, Marcus, JT, Angela. This isn't a memorial," he told a crowd there. "It's a promise." One morning, he returned to that same courthouse. A statue now stood out front. A soldier on one knee, using crutches as swords. The plaque read, "Dignity is not measured by how long a man stands, but by how fiercely he refuses to fall." Calvin touched the cold bronze. Natalie stood beside him, tears in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered. Calvin nodded. I didn't stand alone, he said. And beneath the golden sunrise, he saluted the memory of every battle that had brought him home, not whole, but unbroken, forever standing, even from his knees.